All right, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Did you get a good shot of coffee? You ready to talk about some cool stuff? Um, so, my name is Filippo, and I'm the head of innovation at UNStudio and UNSense. It's two companies, a design company and a technology company. That's our little sister baby. What we do at UNStudio is architecture. So this probably one of the most famous things that we've been doing is the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, and definitely it resonates on on people's mind and on people's skins, literally, so a lot of the work we do really kind of embraces a sort of a kind of communicative level, and that way of communicating for us is very important. It's about information, and information is actually what I will talk about today. The way that we deal with information has always been somewhere in between the kind of the hardware, the physical, the kind of the real solid architecture, and the kind of what is behind it, whether that is this I think was an old Autolisp script, but it's in a way, how do we connect the two things with each other? What I do within UNStudio is to lead a team which is called UNSKnowledge, and it's substantially our research and development team. It's a team of multidisciplinary talents. There are people from different backgrounds, so they're not only architects, there are very different people, and that multidisciplinarity is for us a key and essence to kind of withstand the mantra of how we deal with architecture and with the built environment. And the mantra fundamentally is about future-proofing the future. And that is a very important thing for us, because the built environment is very slow. It takes a lot of time to construct things. So we need to have that vision of the future in order to withstand that. So we kind of developed a methodology which is basically more kind of interactive, is funneling, is iterating, is optimizing, and brings us from a past to a future. And in order to do that, we need to diverge. We need to think very broad about the things that we have to do in order to funnel back into decisions. So if we think broad, today we know that we are ever interconnected. We are ever connected with each other, and that our cities are growing like crazy. So we are densifying. We are much more closer to each other. But also the technology that is embedded in the built environment is becoming very small and is becoming very cheap. And this is already big. I've seen a latest 3M sensor that is going to be embedded on all Hayworth chairs, which is almost invisible. So technology is just everywhere. And we as human beings are much more geared and much more prone to be able to absorb all that kind of technology. So this is the most connected man in the world. He has all sort of gadgets, and he's a kind of a person that is already going to be part of that. Are we allowing the technology to be part of the world? And the technology is not only in wearables, it's also in our cars. It connects to our wearable, it connects to our streets, it connects to our homes, it connects to our desktop, it connects to our Outlook. Everything is kind of connected, and it goes towards what a few people are thinking, which is what they call the mesh, or they call the space web. So it's about the fact that we will be living in a technology in the future. So technology is just actually everywhere around us, and we will be in it. So we are puzzling ourselves, how should we design that world where technology is all the way around us? And we know that the way we design that is just a little tip, but there is a bottom side of the iceberg, which is all that kind of new technologies is popping up, and it's going to change and revolutionize the things that we do. And we as human beings are tool making animals, right? That's the famous Marshall McLuhan. So as we from the very prehistory, as we would pick up a stick from ground, we would extend ourselves with technology. So technology is always something that has redefined us as human beings. And today we have new technologies. So we have a new form of seeing. We have a new form of mixed realities. And all these technologies evolving in a way that we can't possibly capture, because technology is developing exponentially. And we are trained as linear thinkers. So we are very good in counting 1, 2, 3, 4, but try counting exponentially. So this is an example of a 30 linear steps, means 30, but 30 exponential steps is 1 billion. We can't count like that. And that's why we cannot see the future coming. So how do we embrace that? And what does it mean for architecture? How does it mean for our spaces? So we're trying to capture that the kind of embeddedness of technology into it. And the technology is seen from many kind of visionary artists in different ways. But what do we believe? How should we interpret that? What does it mean for our processes, for the way that we design? Well, we strongly believe in the value of, in the key value of design and in the key experience of that. But we are conscious that we need to reframe a lot of the things that we know already in order to move towards this future. So one of the things is that our role should change. So we believe that we should not design by discipline. So it's not really about the architect or the engineer or the landscape architect or the civil. So all these disciplines create boundaries, and we need to create boundless sort of designs. So we need to design by experience. The second thought is that as we are thinking at various kind of level of disciplines, so we are quite. I've been quite, so we took these three kind of lines. So there's a line which is about design. So that's where most of, I think, people in the audience here are busy with. And there's a line of construction, which is kind of, well, how do you materialize that? And there's a line which is kind of emerging, which is that of embedded technology. All the things that are inside building that we don't really talk about, but that they are emerging. All those sensors, all the system, the lighting, everything that is connected to it. All the software of buildings. And this third line is, on our opinion, the most emerging things that is going to revolutionize all our way of working, all our processes. So we see these three lines converging, and we've been spending the most of the last 10 years really focusing on the relationship with design and construction. And we found an amazing quantity of tools, of knowledge that goes around this kind of two lines. But as this third line is emerging and is becoming very dominant, we see that we will be able to design more in a human-centric way. So more not only focusing on the relationship of the construction, but including the experience of us as human beings in that design process, and how will that affect the way we will work. And for that, this is maybe the same thing in another way. We looked a lot in the past years about that kind of trend which was about control and optimization, efficiency. That's all the kind of geometrical notions. We moved to kind of a more generative experimental way. So there's a lot of kind of this kind of simulation parts. But as this kind of new technologies enabling us to change, we talk much more about what we call data-driven design. And that's maybe kind of the frontier of where we are at. But we foresee a future in which we will talk about predictive design. So where the information of technology that is embedded into building will enable us to rechange the way we design, because we know that the technology is over there, and because we know that the process will change. So how do we do that, and how do we future-proof the future, right? So how do we bring that to reality? So we've been investigating these kind of notions for long. So this is a very old project. In fact, it's from 1999, and it's the IFCCA in New York, where we were using the tools we had available in those days. So we had a lot of Excel, and we took a lot of that notions of information to bring that information around the way that the passengers were moving in the terminal, and use other tools in order to kind of to portray and to bring that information back to us as designer, in order to enable us to take smart decisions about the things that we would be designing. As we've been evolving kind of our notion of design toolings and design, we've been focusing a lot later much more on kind of the tooling aspects. So for this building that has been realized in Hangzhou, China, we developed a lot of custom toolings, and that custom tooling was about the relationship of how can we optimize things, how can we control it in a good way, how can we foresee that the manufacturing of that would bring us in further developments, and how can we make sure that all that would connect us to a level of dialogue. And I think that kind of work is developing from tooling to workflows. So for this project that is now under construction, I think we took a very different approach where we focus on the design of each and single stage workflow. So per project, the design of how we approach it is changing because we are able to do that. And the relationship that it brings us, it's about it's about enhancing the kind of business capability of rethinking about workflows and rethinking about how we approach the scalability of the things that we do throughout our own organization. I know we are developing a lot of kind of future mindsets and future-proof thinking. So we are on this roadmap now we're doing a research, European Union funded, on what we call 10D design. And why is this important? What I would like to bring here to the conversation is not so much about the knowledge of the 10D, but it's about the kind of effects that each one of these kind of levels, each of these layers will bring to the business of design. So, for example, the 5D, we talk a lot about analysis. So we talk about a lot of cost and building, but what can this potentially be doing? So what is the information, if we can put information about materials, about anything basically into a model, what will that do? So one idea is that it can generate a very strong relationship with the chain of the manufacturing. So the whole kind of circularity of production of materials will be much more connected to the information of buildings, because we can simply go back to a building and point out which kind of information will be in it, and we are able to, in a phase of renovation, for example, extract that information and take that circularity aspect into it. So that's a very strong idea. We often talk about that kind of virtual twin. So I think most of the projects that we are doing today contain this notion of the digital twin. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept. Raise your hands if you're familiar. Fantastic. So, but what does that mean for us as designers? So the fact that we have that possibility, what will it change? So we thought, well, if we know that the typical design process is very much, at least from a kind of architect perspective, that's what I'm talking about, is much more geared towards the design stages, and it kind of fades out towards the moment in which the building is kind of constructed and the designer disappears in the moment that the building is over there. So in the post-occupancy, we're not there anymore. We imagine that possibility of the simulation of the building will enable us to be much more present in a later stage, because we get information of what that building will be doing. So we are able to anticipate, together with the management of the building, so the facility manager or the owner, we can create a new relationship to the whole process of the existence of a building. And if we're moving forward to that kind of IoT sensor integration, and that is a very hot topic in the sense that we all spent a lot of energy in setting up our new little startup called UNSense. So you can imagine the sense in that is all about the sensorial. So the embeddedness of these sensors is actually extremely important. And if there are new realities like this one of Brainforce Smart District that we just announced a few days ago in the Netherlands, will generate not only new relationships with the built environment, but we need to rethink of the model of building as a whole. So the kind of the connections here are not only about the designer and the design process and the engineering, but they go beyond. They go towards what does it mean for the health of the built environment if we embed sensors? What kind of information will we be having? Should we create new form of partnerships with insurance companies / banks / designers to create new built environments? So we all of a sudden have the possibility to rethink about the whole industry as a whole, because this technology allows us to do that. And I would like to share a few examples of what we've been doing to take all these kind of notions into practice, and a few of the breadcrumbs of a few of our steps of how we are doing this. So one of the project that I would like to present is this one of Brainport Smart District. As you can see, this project is completely, at appearance, it doesn't look very technological. Right? And that was very intentional. But everything that is in this project is extremely full of sort of technology. And we will create 100 homes that will be completely paid by the use of data. So none of the tenants that will live in these 100 buildings, in these 100 homes, will have to pay any rent. So there's no rent. Data will allow for that. So we are engineering now all sort of systems behind the business of a smart city. And that includes the process of us also as designers. So where are we involved in which parts, and which parts will be adapted for it, and which kind of tools do we need for that? So we need a lot of kind of geo-informative data. We need a lot of data that connects to the location, the places where we are. We need a lot of simulations. So the same concept as the digital twin, but think about it in a city way. And a lot of this kind of information is already available. So as we think about that, then we need to rethink about, so what are the data streams and who's accessing what? And it's not only about data in so far as we also need new disciplines. So we are just looking now for new ethicists to join our team, because we definitely need to rethink about a lot of the things that we give for granted, but that we actually don't really know about data and how to use it. So we need to question ourselves a lot. And the process of design definitely allow us, so the kind of generative toolings that we've always been using in the last 10 years is allowing us to kind of speed up this kind of developments, but we need also new tools that allow to integrate all that kind of rainbowish information is over there, which is, it's in Dutch, but it means water, biodiversity, fooding, energy, and recreation. And all that kind of businesses that are connected to the whole energy and the ecosystem of that will need to be included into the design process as much as steel and the hardware that we have today. So how do we include that into it? So we need new tools to do that. We need new energy, new facility. We are not ready for it, and that's what we are facing now, that we actually do not have an answer. So I don't have an answer to that, and I'm pretty honest with it. As we're talking about, this is another project. It's an headquarter for Eni. It's an Italian oil company, which we made a proposal for an headquarter building. So what is important about this building is that we talked about a new type of process. So with them, we envision a process that is more circular. So we imagine ourselves not as the type of architect that would say, okay, we'll deliver you a project, but we thought, well, we will be the type of architect that will be engaged for a longer term, because simply we have new technology that can be embedded into it. So, and what does it mean, new technology? It means that we had to redesign all sort of like interfaces in the building. So it's a lot of that user experience design, but applied to the hardware of buildings. So, and this is, for in the center at the entrance, there was this gigantic Oculus that would display information of the travelers coming to the headquarters. But we also had to think of what would be the operating system of the building. So, and we struck some good collaborations with a couple of partners to be designing an operating system for the building. And how does that interface with the tools that we have today? How can we anticipate that? So we know that in order to bring this information, we need to assess the fact that we need to change our own behavior of how we approach both the design, but also how the building will be approached, and that we need to rethink about the way we interact with technology, and we need to explain that. So it was not only thinking of the technology, so the operating system, but also thinking of the management of how we would change the behavior of those tenants. So it brings in a psychological component into it, and the two things are interlocked. As we are rethinking about the connection of technology, nature, and energy, we had to dig into all sort of new form of vegetation and possible input that had to be given to the building in order to create a true ecosystem. And up until the kind of the definition that would have into the information of light and what the building would portray to the neighborhood, with this urban informatics that would give resolutions of how much energy would the building consume, and therefore link the kind of building operating system with the kind of neighborhood relationships and the kind of urban relationship that would have. As we zoom into a smaller scale, we use the same kind of ideas or the same kind of methodologies towards the design of smaller spaces. This is a space, it's a prototype that we launched as Salone a couple of years ago. It's called Reset, and it's based on the fact that health is changing. So the health industry is different as a whole. So as in the past you would think of health as something that you would need a cure for. So if your knee is broken, you go to the doctor and say, well, my knee is broken, but can I fix it? And today we think of health in a more holistic way. So we are trying to look at health as a preventive system. So that's why we go more to the gym. We try to look at food in a different way. So and how can the built environment help us to do that? We saw in Moscow there are popping up these things called rage rooms. So literally rooms where you can smash everything and gets you off track. So we had to rethink of a different solution that would be more something that could apply to the clients that we work with. So what we would apply to an office building. So we did a lot of research on stress and the effect that stress has to the economy of the work environment, and it has a pretty large impact to the way that we deal with our own built environment, and therefore it creates a big kind of big money hole into the system, as there are in fact a lot of stressed people, and there's a lot of kind of damage that the stress has to our work system. So how can we reduce that? How can we counteract that? So we created this kind of series of pods that reflect the way that you can be distressed yourself in different ways, and they are going towards that kind of prevention way. And these two pods are combining informations, and that's where we took the same notions that we need in order to design a facade of a building, and we applied towards how we design the information that we can get from people towards information. So we were harvesting the pulsation and the brave wavelength. We combined the two data set into a single number, which we call the reset index, and we could give an information to the person that was going inside, or if they would go inside multiple times, of the level of their being reset. So the same notion that we apply to kind of a facade data set, we could easily apply it to a personal data set. And that's where the kind of transfer of knowledge of information gave us the possibility to use the same kind of technology, the same kind of way of thinking, but to translate it to a different kind of human-centric aspect. And that's what I meant at the beginning by thinking of embedded technology in the built environment will allow us to kind of work in a very human-centric way, is the possibility, in fact, to think human-centric in this case, as these are the opportunities that are emerging at the connection of these two levels. So a lot of kind of the design here went into kind of an array of different kind of sources and had to interact with different type of software and different type of hardware and different type of ways how to deal with all this kind of information, and that forced us to think, and forced us to think still today, that we can use almost that the information that we have has to be transferable. So it has to be kind of seamless transferable between the kind of different things that we are doing. And a lot of the notion of that came into practice when we had to program the algorithm of these kind of receptors, and in the programming of the kind of the touch interface and into the methodology, which was more of a kind of user experience methodology about experimenting and giving input and then recalibrating the kind of the algorithm towards giving a better kind of data output to read this. The other kind of developments that we are doing is going to a different scale, which is that of research that we're doing in solar technology. And so you've seen a kind of a very urban scale, a very building scale, a very kind of interior scale, and this becomes a very product scale. So you kind of see the pattern of my conversation is about the kind of type of information design or the kind of thinking that we have. We can translate it in many different scale. So, and the scale of this project is about solar technology. So we've very much always complained about that we don't like solar panel on our buildings because they look very ugly, and so we've been thinking, okay, how can we change this? How can we redesign a solar panel? So we've been actually redesigning the solar panel. So it's very simple. So we took a layering approach. So there's different layer of this panel, but substantially there's a system how to produce it, and that's what we had to kind of work a lot about it, to re-engineer that system. We use our tools, the tools that we typically use as architects, to kind of rethink of that process, and that takes any kind of image and reproduces into kind of a solar technology, which is as efficient as in a solar panel, but the aesthetics of it can be anything. Anything can be projected into it, and the resolution of that can also be changed. So we can have higher and smaller resolutions, and it can look like potentially anything. And this is not just a kind of a design idea, but what we are set up with our technology company is actually to develop this into products. So we're stepping outside the design realm, and we just launched in fall last year Solar Visuals, which is a new offspring of our company that produces this. So we going from design to production, and this is very interesting because it brings us to the dialogue with how technology is produced and how do we design the systems in between. And that was reflecting back to, so how do we future-proof the future? So looking back at all this what we talked about, so we projected a scale of different levels. So we see there is a line about technology. We know the technology is really changing really fast, and it's going on its way. We know that the economy is also changing its way because there are new models, and that is allowing to see, okay, if I can use data in different ways, if I can use things in different ways. But what should we know about the technology that we're using to design? And where are we today? So we are in almost just after a kind of a post-human centric way. So, and if we can evolve that towards going towards the kind of the smartness, towards the human responsiveness, we know that we see a roadmap towards kind of new possibilities. And this, we know that we cannot do that alone, and that's why the name UNStudio means United Network. So we need a network, we need partners, and we need to collaborate together to bring this future hub. But effectively, why should we do that? And what are the questions that are behind it? So in a way, we are set to think about new questions. So and the questions are, they're not about efficiency, they are about people. We believe that we should think about designing for human beings. So how should we building, vitalize and energize the users? We need a new set of questions in the background to create that future. And we can only ask each other these questions today. So, and we need new form of values. So, which is not only the kind of the cost values, but we need new form of values that bring us to think about the things that we are doing today in a different ways. So we need to rethink together at the way we do things towards the future. Thank you so much.
Has anybody got any questions they'd like to put to Filippo?
How do you see the role of the architect changing related to information?
Did anybody here is asking about the role of the architect? So we are firm believer that as architects we need always to rethink what our role is. So and then we see that there is a shift towards embracing new possibilities because of technology. So as architects, we've been always fond of that kind of digital computational realm, and now we're looking at that as kind of a new source of possibilities. So that can enable to design spaces in a different way. And therefore we need new professions, we need new schools. Schools need to teach us different things, and the opportunities are just there. And we see ourselves more as a kind of partner. So we also think that we need new business models, new form of, we need new form of making processes. So would that process of concept design, schematic design, is that process working, right? Should that process not be also changed? Is that, so we need to rethink altogether as an industry because of the opportunities that we have to rethink about that, and therefore the role changes with it, and maybe we'll do something different.